Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Friday. Thanks for joining me. My name is Suzanne Carowin. I am the CMO of Vitrio, and Vitrio does a number of things. We're a technology and business consulting firm. And one of the things that Vitrio has done is support a role that I was in for close to I think 8 years. Yeah, close to 8 years at a big national association. And that was huge. And we did everything and had everything, and it was a lot. So if you've been in an overwhelmed role like that, everybody's coming out with the head of marketing, membership communications, right? There's the things coming at you constantly. And it's just like everything was execution all the time. And one of the things I tried to do, because prior to that, I had been at either agencies and being in technology agencies, like I was in a HubSpot practice for a long time. We'd also did email marketing, et cetera. And then prior to that, I was in software companies. And I was happy to say that what was great about software companies is that they really taught and trained you in product marketing. And I feel like that discipline I was able to bring into my association role for all those years. But it's not something that I find that is very common in the association and nonprofit world. And so I thought today, let's talk about it and let's see if this can be of value to you, because I think it could help to, at the end of the day, unless you tell me, and if you can chat it up, go off mute and be like, no, Suzanne, we have more members, we have more non-dues revenue, we have more revenue than anything. We don't need any more, right? We don't need any more attendees. We don't need any more. Like, no one says that. So if we can take some of the structure of product marketing and start to think about it a little bit differently, then I think it can be of help, right? And at the end of the day, I really believe in nonprofits and associations. I still do a lot of work with them. I consult with them. I belong to them. I volunteer for them, and I don't want them to go away. And since all of you work for one, I want them to not go away either, right? So I want to make sure that we can figure it out. And at the end of the day, many, many organizations have been out there 100+ years, but the thing is, in order to be able to last that long, you do have to do that terrible word called change, right? And maybe you've heard that AI is out, and we're at a huge inflection point, and with technology and everything coming together. So we definitely need to figure out how we can help within our organizations to guide them and change them, so we can be a little bit more in tune with what's happening and with the market. And it's complicated because we have more people in the workforce of different generations than we've ever had in the history of mankind, right? That's just one challenge, let alone everything else. So that's what we're going to talk about. So we're talking specifically today. I want to focus our talk on why it's so hard in the nonprofit and association world to do marketing first and foremost. Now, I know you already understand this because you live it every day, but I want to just reiterate, and it's because most of the time we don't have everything we have is intangible. We don't have like a product. We're not selling a lipstick, we're not selling a shoe or a new car, an actual consumer packaged good that you can touch, smell, feel, see, you can use all your senses. It's a little bit different when you're talking about the power of advocacy, or you're talking about why you should belong. So it's a harder marketing. It just is. I mean, anybody will tell you to try to market an intangible good. It's much more difficult than it is to market a tangible good. So again, what we want to do then is, if we've got intangible goods, we got to get into our intangible good mindset and first and foremost understand, right, that we've got to align the value proposition of the product. So whatever we're doing here with this product, and by product, we're going to use product to be generic and just throw anything in there. So products are meetings, conferences, events, membership renewal, membership join. I'm going to distinguish those two, right? Could be company membership, could be a board position. That's still a product that you need to sell. It could be a staff position that you need to sell. Anything that you need to quote unquote sell, whether real money's coming in or it's just a thing about actually belonging or taking the role, that's still a sale. Okay, so we're going to use those to generically outline what we're doing here. And again, you actually might have real products too. Maybe you have bookstores. Maybe you actually sell guides, or you sell, some sort of other thing that you have within your organization. But whatever it is, we're going to line them all up on the whiteboard or on our Excel spreadsheet or whatnot. Start using our AI tools to do this, but we're going to start to map out what I like to call the product placemat. So we need to really look at each product, right? And then we need to say for each product, we're going to build it out. And the number one thing I want you to focus in on before we get to like, I'm going to market my annual event. And the first thing we say is it's going to be in Orlando. No, we don't, that should be immaterial. Where it is, don't market the event venue, right? We need to market the value of being there. And that means we're going to shift our focus. And this is the first piece of product marketing is really getting to the benefit of what's the emotional or psychological reason. So I have to get my target market right. But for that particular target market or that segment of it, for that group, what is going to be how am I answering the emotional and psychological benefit they will get by consuming this product? If we don't have that, all of your marketing will fall flat and you'll be like, I don't know, it just didn't take on or it didn't stick. Right? Nobody remembers the tagline we have. We keep using a new hashtag every year for our annual conference. How come no one knows it? Because it didn't stick, right? And stickiness comes from pain or pleasure. There's no two things about it. So however you want to market that, but usually if you want long-term, pain long-term is not sustainable. Short-term, it can incite to action. Long-term, you need to have something that is closer to pleasure, right? That has a nice memory. We encode it in our brains. We're emotional about it. We feel good about it, etc. So the first thing we're going to do with all of our intangible products, we're going to put them out. However you want to do it, you can do this as a group project. We can have a consultant come in and do all your sticky notes, or you can just do it on Excel or spreadsheet, Google Sheets, whatever you want. But start outlining all the things where your time goes as an organization to try to market this particular thing. And that might be awareness, but you need to know that it's there. And what is the emotional or psychological benefit? And you might say, it's different. And I hope you say this, depending on who the person is. That's exactly right. So we need to group those groups, that segments, and say for that group of people, and maybe it's based on breakdown of demographics on age, maybe it's based on an urban rural split, maybe it's based on where they are in that profession. What aspect of the industry they're in. There's a whole slew of ways that you might break those down, but we need to get pretty clear that we can't be in it's just every person has a unique reason. No, we have to group them and cluster them in some way, or else we can't we'd have a bazillion campaigns, right? Having said that, in today's most association, it's very rare you can just have one campaign with one set of copy, right? With one call to action that actually fits everyone. So you probably need to have some big groupings based on, again, any of those things that we said. And then we're going to group that out and we're going to talk about, again, what is the emotional hook? That's what we're going to call it. What's the hook, right? The what's in it for me, or why do they care? How am I going to get their attention, et cetera. And later on, we're going to give that information, the crux of it, right? It's the essence of the product we're talking. We're going to hand that over to our creative team, and maybe you're the same people, so you just change hats. Small team is just you. That's fine too. But we got to get first to the why do they care and the what's in it for them and the emotional benefit they're going to get by consuming this product. Okay, so from that standpoint, every product has a life cycle, right? So maybe you've seen the classic, marketing 101 product life cycle, but we need to also then map out for that particular product we just put on our placemat, what is actually the life cycle of that product. And then we're going to go through all of these and talk about them. So the big thing that you have to say and saying about this product and the market, right? It's answering these big four questions. This is a strategy. So again, on my Excel spreadsheet or whatever, I have my product title at the top, and then I'm going to start breaking it up by these questions. Who's it for? Right? Like we just said, who's the specific member or member cluster or member group? Where are they in their career stage? Everything you can talk about them and write them. That's where those personas come in. So if you're a HubSpot user, right, make sure, or you're any marketing automation, but HubSpot in particular has that whole persona piece. Make sure this is where the personas fit in. You might have multiple personas, and that makes sense too. We just said that. Maybe this is quote unquote membership. And in membership, you really need to talk about the membership viewpoint of what it means to somebody who's 22 years old and just graduated, somebody who's 32, 42, 52, 62, 72, 82, 92, 102, right? At some point in my membership, I had an 18-year-old and a 104-year-old. That's a lot to market to, not the same messages, right? So we're going to put all that together and we really get clear by product. So this is going to take a long time because most organizations have a lot more than one product. Usually, tell me if I'm wrong, you can always come back. I'd love to know. Usually, really, if you sit down and you look at most associations, we map this out together in an engagement. You're probably looking between, I'm going to go in the low end, about 15 or 16 products, and the high end, maybe like 40. That is not atypical, right? So especially if you're like big powerhouse national level association. Okay, so second, we're going to do the what's in it for them, the emotional payoff. I said, what's the hook? For each one of those groups, what's the hook? Now we're going to get to more of the tactical stuff. How are we going to position it? Knowing who they are and what's emotionally going to resonate with that group, how are we going to approach them? How are we going to price it? How are we going to package it? How are we going to put those pieces together? And then how are we going to bring it to market? And so maybe again, I don't typically see this in association jobs or nonprofit jobs, but if you look at corporate marketing jobs, you see all the time the letters GTM, right? Like, do you understand GTM? And that's go to market. How are we going to actually introduce this to the product, to the market, if it's a new product, right? And that's actually a different strategy than keeping it in the market and growing it and then also retiring it. Okay. All right. I love this slide because it tells you what product marketing is not. And so often I feel also in associations, because nobody has the budget, or nonprofits, even worse, you don't have all these people with these glorious, roles that are segmented out. So what happens all the time, and you get a lot of pressure from maybe your board members or committee members or whomever to get on to getting right to the creative, right? Like, what's it going to look like? When do we get the email? When do we get the postcard? So we need to do the product marketing first, and you have to be so disciplined in order to say, let's not skip that step. Okay, that's the biggest thing. Everybody gets right into execution very quickly. There's pressure to get stuff out. Even in 2026, when we all know email doesn't work, there's still let's send an email. Yeah, if I'm wrong, let me know. If you're using some completely different tactics, I would love to know. So what product marketing is not, it's not the brand marketing. It's not the whole reputation kind of thing. It's not talking about filling the funnel with opportunities. It's not talking about lead generation and sales closing and what that looks like, right? And it's not about in the weeds of the actual product and how it works. That's not product marketing, right? It's how we're going to, again, place this product into the market with the right people, with the right purpose, right, with the right pricing, and actually grow revenue. If we're not growing revenue, you're not doing product marketing, right? And revenue in whatever way. But at the end of the day, your finance people, they care about, right? You can talk all this illustrious stuff, but you need to have the money coming in. So product marketers, by the way, are oftentimes, the closest you can get to revenue. And it's not atypical that you would get revenue in there. As a matter of fact, one of the key ways to get up to be a CMO, that path, you got to be right there with revenue, right? If you're over in like impression world and like fuzzy, it looks good and feels good and just creative, it's going to be hard to move over to that level because those things become revenue based. Okay, so 5 hats, 1 function, roles of product marketing. So you've got all these things that you're doing here. As a product marketer, you're doing the strategy. You're then translating these things into the benefit and the payoff. You're coordinating all these things. You're equipping your sales and member services with these materials and the analysts. So I love the orchestrator. You're making sure all these pieces happen. So at some point you became very much product marketing is very also part and parcel with project management. You're making sure that these things are not forgotten. And I think the bigger thing, aside from just, analyst is number 5, because it's always a feedback loop with the numbers. Is it working? What do the impressions say? What do the visits on the website say, right? How many downloads did we get? How many registrations did we get? How many whatever your set of KPI, your key performance indicators are, you got to do that analysis. But the bigger thing and the hardest part, I think, of product marketing, it's staying disciplined and not letting people get you off of doing this, because these things take time, and it takes discipline to say, we're going to put it out to market. We're going to stick with the plan. We're going to stick with the pricing, right? And we're going to give it X amount of time to work before we start to make changes. And when we make changes, we're going to do them iteratively. We're not going to do this like it didn't work at all, right? If you put in the work ahead of time to come up with a strategy, and you did your work as a product marketer, there should be no room for actual panic at any time in the process, right? It's just tweaking. It's very scientific method. I have a hypothesis. We put all these things into place. We're going to let it run. These are the channels we chose to market this product. And now we're going to test, tweak, right? Test, tweak. And I think that mindset, that's a very important mindset. It's not emotional. So this isn't like I hate, and it's not the creative team. So sometimes creative people, they don't want anything to do with product marketing, because this is very practical and pragmatic and measurement oriented, and it's very step by step. Like I said, it is very scientific method. So as another kind of side note on career-wise, you often see, especially on software technical stuff, product marketing and product management are kind of they're right next to their sister kind of roles. They should go hand in hand, but that's why oftentimes in product marketing, they look for technical people. They look for STEM thinking, engineering thinking, because you need that systematized, very methodical and not emotional, right? Because there's a lot at stake. And so there is a lot at stake of this. Most organizations spend a good amount of money taking a product to market. It's like having a baby. You've just birthed the baby. Now you have to actually rear it. So we need to remember, right, all that in our budgeting too. Okay, the whole talk, though, is talking about this product life cycle. So every product has a life cycle. And again, if you're bringing a product to market, you don't know what that life cycle is. But I guarantee, right? So in our product placemat, you're going to put another little curve for products that you just inherited, that somebody said, oh, we market this thing. So maybe it's like a 50 every year you've got the annual dinner, or every year you've got a board meeting, or whatever the case might be. You've got the certification program that you just are, now, hey, great job. You get to be involved in now marketing this. So you need to find out where your product is on the life cycle. So again, it's not very common. I mean, I think you're very lucky and blessed in your career if you get to bring a product to market. I think it's a very exciting thing. It doesn't happen that often. Most of the time we're coming into a role in inheriting a product and needing to either grow it or maintain it. And then also on the tail end of bringing in a product, it's not so often you get the opportunity to sunset a product and take it, and that's called, get it out of the market. But in this kind of world of all products, think of it just like human life here, you have the introduction part, the growth part, it gets to maturity, kind of steady state, and then there's a natural decline of the product. Unless you do something to really change the maturation curve and you bring out like a completely new and revised, new and improved kind of piece of that product, or you do something to interrupt it. But most products will just follow this natural thing. And so your role as a product marketer is to say, where do we need to interrupt this curve to go with where we need it to go? So strategically, from a business standpoint, I need to know, do I need to accelerate growth, right? And what does that mean? Do I need to accelerate getting it out of the market? It's costing us too much to continue to, I know it's like a sacred cow project, program that one of our members loves, but we need to figure out it's costing us too much. We can't support it anymore. It's not sustainable. So we got to get it out of the market. That I think is actually pretty common in the association space, that there's been some product or program that got introduced and it's just someone's favorite. And it's like, this is what we've always done. right? And that's how you end up having, 40 different products that you now have. Or like there's a lot of consolidation going on in the association space. So maybe your association just merged with another one, and now you've got their products too, and like nobody wants to say, we got to cut it. So those things are becoming actually pretty commonplace as we kind of go through this economic contraction period. Okay, so your point there as the product marketer is to look at that life cycle, know where your product that you manage is right now, and then know what you need to do in order to where you need to move it in the market. Okay. So, for example, this is just a product here in portfolio. So you might have, this is a very typical example in your whole portfolio, and that's what we call it, your product portfolio collection. So you're using your product marketing terminology. You'd say, hey, what's in your portfolio? And you say, oh, she's got the event portfolio, or he's got the certification portfolio. And maybe within there, you've got multiple products. So an example might be, your product, you have a brand new micro-credential that you're introducing. Okay, so that's brand new. You're going to bring it to market. You're going to go to market with it. Growth, you've got a regional conference series. You need to actually increase it. It's caught on. People know about it. It's not year one. It's probably year 3, right? That kind of thing. Maturity, this is your annual conference, is always the classic example, right? And you need to figure out why no one's coming anymore and what we need to do to either again sunset it, maybe it's too expensive, or maybe we need to outsource it, or maybe we need to just revive it or break it into regions or something, right? And then we have kind of like the classic decline of the print directory, legacy workshop, etc. But I think it's interesting because and by the way, I should note, I think it's also imperative when you're a product marketer in the association that's been around, I think it's imperative that you do some look back and historically what was popular and see, because sometimes you can bring something back from the grave, if you will, and it will be very popular. I did that at my organization. We had a print magazine. We got rid of it for years because of cost, and we actually brought it back for a couple editions, and it was insanely popular because they hadn't had anything in print in so long. So it was like new and improved, right? So each of these products, right, we're going to do that and put it on the curve. So you might have heard of the 5 Ps of marketing. This is like your classic, 5 Ps: product, price, place, promotion, and now they've added people, right? So we need to then, for each of those products, we need to define that too. So that's going to, again, go in my big spreadsheet document for that product after I've defined, again, all the pieces of the segment, what's in it for them. And we're going to come in and we're going to get into, again, some of the brass tacks: price, right? Price tiers, member versus non-member. Do we do early bird? How much does it cost? All those things. What are the pricing rules, right? That alone is a big section. Then we're going to say place. Where are we placing it in the market? So how do we access it? And to me, place in today's world is also imperative that we consider, are we placing it correctly in a lot of times people just go, oh, direct mail, email, website. Let's get into then, of course, we're going to say something on social media. Define it. Don't just say social media. Define it. Make it different for Facebook versus TikTok versus Snapchat versus Instagram, whatever set you use, versus LinkedIn, whatever those are. And then make sure you also have, what is it going to do in Google, maybe your Google business profile, and what is it going to do in all these other areas that maybe you're not thinking about. So now we need to say, how is it going to work within AI? And not just AI, but AI by channel, right? How's it going to work in ChatGPT versus Gemini versus Perplexity versus, keep going, Grok, whatever you want to go. So those are placements, because we have opportunities in all of those channels now to do very unique things with this. The world of digital has just exploded with AI. Now we have streaming TV. I don't know if anybody's using that, but that can be super popular it can be really effective depending on what your organization does and if it makes sense, right? Maybe, but if you could get into Roku, if you can get into Sling or YouTube TV, and you're one of those commercials between the right show, I mean, that's huge. So all those things are popular. There's like ChatGPT just came out with advertising. So you can place stuff everywhere now. There's so many opportunities of where to put this stuff. It's overwhelming. Okay. And then again, all these kinds of things about, again, continuing with that. All right, let's get into pricing. I find pricing to be like, here's where the finance people show up. They want to know, well, what did you decide, right? And so we could do a hours worth of just stuff on pricing and pricing strategy and that type of thing. The one thing I want you to walk away though is again, value based. This has to be value based. And I think oftentimes in associations, what happens is that the association is trying to cover their operating costs. And they say, okay, if our personnel costs this and our building costs this and our, whatever, our legal costs this and all of our kind of operating expenses. And then we need to like have this and we're getting this much money in member per head. Therefore, here's we're going to put that in, plug it into an equation, and we're going to price this product as this. That's great. Hey, it'd be great if it worked, but that has no bearing on the actual market, right? So it has no merit. You have to say, what will the market bear? If the market will not bear that, then it can't be that, right? So if you say, and that's where you put that out, you make your hypothesis based on these inputs, you put it out there, and if nobody's a taker, then it's not the right price, right? So then you need to fix it. Now, I think the other part is oftentimes either an organization will either price it too high or they actually will price it too low. Too low is not necessarily a problem. It's a strategy, right? There's always should we have a freemium model just to get volume in and get to know the people? Always an option, right? If that makes sense. Converting though from free to paid, never easy. Don't let anybody tell you it is. It's never easy. Will you get a lot of names? Yes. How much does it cost you to deal with all those names? You have to say, is that worth it? So that's something to consider. But I think that the other part is if you price it too low, and many times you might say, my go-to-market strategy is to come under and price it low under a competitor, so we can actually get some stuff. And longer term, we're going to raise the price. Very common, right? So, but however you decide to do that, remember that it has to be value-based. Because it can't be what internally, and I've seen this at every software company I've ever worked for. Internally, we're like, this is the greatest thing. We're going to price it like this, right? But if the target market that you're going after, if they don't have the same value, or they have no idea this product, what it is, it's brand new to the market, they didn't know they needed it. It's hard to come in with a high price because they don't know it, right? So it goes with the strategy of how you're going to bring it to market. Maybe it's a high ticket item, but then you're going to put a lot of long sales process to it. That might make total sense, right? But it has to be value based. So you notice like with the one I said is cost plus, how much does it cost us? Plus we're going to add 20%. Okay. That's never the strategy that works. You don't want to go with that strategy, right? The member versus non-member, all these types of things. So figure out how, again, you can value base it. It goes back to look at my target group, my cluster of members, and say, if I price it for $100, will they price $100? And by the way, one of the things that sometimes is in people's personas, sometimes not, when you build out the persona, right, put a wallet description in there. So for this persona, let's call our persona, let's say his name is Xavier McCormick. So for our persona that we named Xavier McCormick, for him, in his life, right, his wallet looks like this, meaning like, here's what his household budget looks like. He's making this amount of income, right? And he has 2 daughters that go to dance. One's in ballet, one's in tap. He's got a wife. They've got 2 cars. Wife's making, she's a nurse, whatever the case might be. Here's what they're doing. But they have, they want to go on vacation every year, all those things in there. Make sure you line that up and you understand that, and understand also who you're talking to. Are they single? If they have a partner, what do we think the partner is? Is the partner going to sign off on the money? Because oftentimes we forget that. If you can't, if it's not a business expense, it's like a personal expense to belong to an organization. You might have somebody next door, right? You might have a parent, you might have a spouse, you might have a partner who says, hey, listen, that $50 a month, no way, man, we need that for us, right? Or I want to go, to Pilates or whatever the case might be. So if you have 2 people that are going to weigh in on that opinion, that's also really good to know, right? That's going to have a big change factor. And of course that has to go with where people are in their life. When they have money, when they don't. They might have more money when their kids are really little, and then the kids get into high school and they start playing sports or flute or whatever, and they don't have any money, right? So we have ebb and flow. They're in their college years or whatever, they're in retirement years. So understanding all that is important so we can come up with that. Now, here's the thing. If the value is right and you've got the emotional hook and they really believe in it, does price matter? Not as much, right? It will at some point, you can't just say it's $1 million, right? But at some point, the price becomes immaterial. So it's finding that fine point about how we're going to find that value based from that group to say what's in it for them, so you can get that right situation. Hence, why it's a hypothesis, and you have to put it out there and do a lot of market research and test it ahead of time. Right? Don't just unveil it. Start seeing it. Start talking to people. Well, would you, if you, you just talk to members, right? Hey, if we were to offer this for $100, would you buy that? And then get their feedback, because again, they're in the field. Make sure you do the field work, right? Don't just sit there in your staff headquarters and then just assume it's going to work. You got to get out in the field and start calling real members, doing, it doesn't have to be a formal focus group, but just start socializing that information around. All right. Also, make sure that it's like the real people. Sometimes in organizations, and this is, you've got the board, which might be way up here in where they are kind of professionally, et cetera. And then you've got people in the field who are just doing the work, and they're like, it's a construction manufacturing association. You've got the construction owner, and he's in a different world than the guy who's like corporate, who owns, 500 franchises, et cetera. So we got to make sure it's, again, right people, right place. Because again, $100 to one person might be, not a big deal. $100 to somebody else is a huge amount of money. So we got to be able to, again, match that stuff. Okay, so moving on. So that's the whole thing, right? We got to be able to look at doing that. And so unless I'm going to the field and I'm getting real deal to test market this thing before I spend a bunch of money to bring it out and possibly embarrass myself, nobody wants to do that. We need to go out there and we need to kind of do this. We need to do this work, as I'm saying. We need to get enough of all this going on and do some test marketing so that we can really start to craft and hone that, right? That gives us those things for social, like social proof, seeing how we get, hey, what do you think? And you just ask people all the time, what do you think? Lead with questions, right? If we did this, hey, what we heard, is this right? Did we hear you right? We heard that one of your major challenges you have is this. If we did this for you, would you buy it? Oh, you wouldn't? Well, if you bought it, do you know 3 people who would? Right? And you just keep going through that process with doing that. I love this slide too, because this is the sometimes in product marketing, people get overly optimistic and they're like, everybody can buy it. Everyone's a target, right? Who wouldn't want our product? Usually with most products, that's not the case. Okay, so it's usually, again, let's look at our clusters. Let's break it down. Also, if everybody needs it, it's a little overwhelming. It's hard to tackle that. And so again, we've talked a lot about our primary persona, but also don't forget to outline who we don't want. And that's important too, because we all know that member that's just like, oh goodness, right? So you want to make sure that we're really targeting and we're getting more of what's already working for our organization. So one of the first ways to do persona is to say, who's actively doing the behavior that you want, right? So let's look at 2, 5, 10 of them and say, what do they have in common? Right? This is like, if we had 10 more of so-and-so, we'd be in great shape. And then say, here are the people who are the detractors, right? And we want to make sure we turn those people off. We don't want to be that inclusive in this case. All right. And so again, as we go forward with the same product targets at different segmentation stage, you can now again start to place, like we said, that product, the life cycle with actually our messaging, right? With actually the growth and where we are here. So we can be able to properly position it. And this is how we're going to start making the go-to-market engine go, or we're going to try to get more growth. So we're going to target those and figure out who we need. Always the idea is to get the innovators in, early adopters. And then again, that's never the push though. The big part of the curve, if we say the product adoption curve, it's always going to be that more early, mid majority. That's where our big bulk of money is going to come in. But we have to be able to do that. We need, again, more tools. It's going to work for them. I love this one. We're going to get into now kind of some brass tacks. The launch. This is now go to market. Launch isn't an announcement. The press release is not a launch. It has to be all of it coming together, but it also shouldn't be just one thing, right? That's not, we need everything coming together, and we're going to hit all the channels at once. We're going to have a coordinated way of doing that. Okay, so we need to figure out how we're going to do a lot of advanced planning. How we're going to embed it into everything else we're doing. So we're cross promoting, etc. We need to make sure we have metrics, right? We have all these kind of metrics we can pull from. We need to have that set ahead of time. There's nothing worse. I've done it so many times. I've been on teams and it's like, I wish we had set a baseline on that one, right? I wish we'd known. So we can say, in 10 months, we've had 37.5% growth or whatever. So think about these things up front before you actually take off. As we go into the growth stage, a couple things to think about. The big thing there is being able to reduce the friction. We're really looking at how people are adopting this. We're looking to say, like, are they keep asking the same questions? Are they calling support? Are they emailing us? But what can we do to take those things away about the product that's causing friction so more people can do it? Are we constantly asking for reviews? Are we saying thank you enough? Are we making sure we have the right number of touch points, right? Are we saying, hey, people like you, they also liked enjoying this? Are we doing that? Are we going back to people that before they didn't like us before? They didn't at least buy from us, et cetera. It's not personal. They didn't buy from us before. Could we take those old prospects and introduce them to this new product that we have? Okay. Going into then again, looking at experience. So this is kind of growth metrics. So this is now talking about, now that we kind of get this going, we've got one set of metrics for how much did it cost us to get to market. Now you see we have this acquisition cost. Okay, so now that we're getting a little bit more into the groove of getting more people to buy this thing, what's that acquisition cost? And always we're going to say to ourselves, this one we agree with finance, how do we bring down the cost of acquisition? How do we speed it up? How do we bring down the cost, right? Is there a way? There should be some economies of scale we can get to. And how can we get to those pieces? Like, what are people doing? How much penetration do we have? When are people falling off? What's the average lifespan that we're seeing in this growth stage? As we get into maturity, right? This is it for associations. This is the business. Retention is what keeps associations in business. We all need new growth because people unfortunately retire or expire, as we like to say, right? But we need to understand, once we get them, we need to keep them. And that can't be like we just take advantage of them. So we have to still be able to constantly have all sorts of programs, different people that are thinking all the time, how do we love up on them, right? How do we re-engage them? How do we have things that showcase that it makes a difference to us, for that, the fact that you paid into our association for 15 years. We have to be careful. We don't want to only be focused on the new people, right? And there's sometimes an overly excited focus on looking at young professionals or new in the industry or first-time members, right? We need all that, but we also need the people in the middle, the people that have been there 5 years, 7 years, 9 years, 15, 23, 55, right? And then we get the top end. Make sure we really are treating them exceptionally well for that type of loyalty, right? Make sure we're tracking them. Make sure we know if they die. Make sure we're doing the right thing. It doesn't cost anything to put out something about, in memoriam, those things. It makes a huge difference to people if the association was that big of a part of their family. Maturity stage, right? Why are people leaving? So again, this gets into lifetime value. We hear that kind of a lot, but figure out if we can say, do we really understand what happened to them, right? And again, we can feed that back into our model of our membership model, which I find doesn't always happen, because we just say, oh, well, last year we had this many. Like, are we putting in natural, not just like they didn't renew, but like they died? Like, do we know the death rate? So we're adding that in, or when the normal time is to retire. There's nothing you can do to hold them if they die. They just can't, but maybe you can say, if we have a lot of those people, Maybe we need a planned giving campaign. Maybe they could leave us a life insurance policy, whatever the case might be. But we need to take those into account. And then again, maybe come up with a program. And that's, again, remember we were talking about the program lines that keep expanding. Maybe you really do have an older population and you had a great number of baby boomers and they've stayed loyally. And now they're getting, into well past retirement, like maybe they're into their 70s, and you might want to, that might be a whole nother program to say, what about planned giving? My gosh, you've been a part of us for 30 years. Can you have a legacy piece? Do you want a brick? Whatever the case might be, there's always more programs to have. And then we're talking about now exiting the product world. So the sunsetting of a product, the decline, realizing to say, can we revive it and reposition it? Can we still get some more life out of this, right? Is it time for it to go to something else? Should we cut it? Do we replace it with something? Do we just announce to everybody? I love that. It's a dignified shutdown. Thank you. We've had this program all this time. We've now sold it off to another association, or it's just past its prime. This happens a lot with events, and it's really hard sometimes to let go of the event, but maybe you can morph it into something else, right? Or awards. You see this all the time with award programs. Somebody came out with a award program and now you have like 7 different awards, and it's just time to retire a particular award. So in doing that, right, we're always going to look at, these are kind of the metrics for the decline metrics, right? So again, we're always going to measure really member sentiment and, is the juice worth the squeeze on this one, to hear the phone blow up versus saying we're going to do that. And then sometimes it's just explaining and just being really transparent with members. Like we take your dollars seriously. We want to make sure that we're putting it in stuff that is going to be helping us to be a sustainable organization. So these are some of the things that you could use there in terms of your decline metrics. All right. So I wanted to make sure I also added in a couple of, I think, key things, because we've done a lot of work here. We could keep going for hours on this topic, but we also want to say, where's the handoff point, right? So the product marketing piece, all this work we've done, which is tremendous, so much. Now we just kind of have to put the creative brief on it to say, what does it look and feel? What does it look like? What do the graphics look, right? What's the tone of the writing that we're going to do with it? How do we know it's like our thing? Right? If I said to you, imagine Nike in your head, give me a typical Nike ad, and I showed you 2 things, at this point, probably in the United States, you'd be able to say that one's Nike and this one is not, right? How do you recognize what that essence is? So we need to take that and package it up. All the things we just talked about, who we're target marketing, who the people are, where do we live, all the personas, how we're going to position it, the pricing, the details, the logistics pieces of it, and we put it into a creative brief, right? And we hand it off to marketing communications and we let them do their magic. They're going to figure out how it's expressed, right? We've done all this other part here, but they're going to come up with that. And then the key is we're going to all work together. We're not just saying like, oh, make it pretty. It's not decoration. This is design. So they're going to take all your input and they're going to now put it into an expression. They're going to bring it back to us and we're going to keep honing it together. We're going to tweak it, and because we're going to know it. At this point, we know our product so well. We have birthed this thing. Like we know it. We have grown it, etc. So we're going to say, okay, now we're going to cycle back and forth to say they could come back with something we're like, wow, nailed it. Or to come back and say, completely off the mark, got to go back to the drawing board, right? But all those deliverables this is how it gets into all the other pieces. And you can see, because this is tangible, this is why everybody comes to this first. We skip all the product marketing because it sounds like, who needs to do that, right? Even though it's really, I would argue, it's a critical, it's a strategy. Now, what's a handoff then from product marketing into sales? So with our friends at marketing communications who developed all this stuff, we're going to take it and now we're going to train our sales membership, whoever are out in sponsored teams, et cetera, that partnership team about this. We're not going to say to them, go make it up yourself. We're not going to say, hey, good luck. Here's the price point. sell 10 booths. We're going to say, here's what we're doing. Here's the pitch. We've thought through the challenges we're going to have. We're going to go through the personas and the anti-personas. We're going to give them all of those things ahead of time, and we're going to actually train them. We're going to give them the pitch, the story, the scenario. Here's what you're looking for. It's the right prospect when you see these 5 things. Here's how you're going to explain it. Here's the words you're going to use. Here's the slide deck you're going to use. Here's the collateral you're going to use. We've already orchestrated it, that we're going to do a big email outreach, and then these things are coming back to you, so be ready. And then we've already pre-written 4 emails for you, whatever the case might be, right? We are equipping. The salespeople's job is not to make this up. Their job is to create relationships and do reach out and maintain those relationships. They are the messenger, right? They are there to message back all the stuff you've already done between product marketing and marketing communications. And then they have a feedback loop that comes back to tell you how on point you are, right? And then you need to say, because the field is never wrong. The field is never wrong. There's the difference between being in a laboratory and saying, we think it's going to work, and then putting it out into reality and seeing if it actually works. The field is never wrong. So the field comes back, and again, they say, we tried, whatever. Now we have to say, maybe it needs some more time. Maybe they need more training, whatever the case might be. But that is a critical, and this is where, again, it becomes better to have, I don't say better, but I think it's more effective to have product marketing and the sales team. This is where they connect well, because I told you the product marketing people tend to be not as emotional, more numbers driven, right? And they want to just see revenue go with their product. They want their product adopted. Salespeople want the product sold. Everybody's on the same tees, and then nobody's like feelings get hurt because it's not creative. The tough part about creative is it's so subjective, right? And some of this other stuff is a little bit more hard-nosed in reality. It just is what it is. It's facts. So it's sometimes I feel like that's a better fit together. Okay, so product marketing is that thread that ties all the revenue together. That's what I would tell you, right? So it's the continuous thread. You need it throughout all the pieces, right? Product marketing is the ones who are saying, here's what we're going to price it at. Here's what I project the revenue is going to be. That's who's talking to finance, right? And then the other stuff, that's why it gets, if you've ever been in a meeting and you see a finance person and they're asking a creative person, the creative person's like, well, we got 1,200 impressions. And people are like looking around like, who cares? Like, why is it tough? Because they're like, well, impressions aren't revenue. You're missing product marketing, right? That's like a red flag. That's because you're missing product marketing. You need this piece of how it all fits together and why impressions fall into this thing, but where it falls in the life cycle of adoption and sales. Impressions are critical. We have to have them for awareness. Nobody buys anything they're not aware of. We must have awareness first. That's one spend of money, right? Then we need to have adoption. That's another spend of money. And being able to explain that, and again, cross-train our finance friends is important too. Okay. So finishing up, I like to give brass tacks of ideas of things to carry out the door. Okay, so 6 things to carry out the door. Sell the transformation, right? Not the tangible items. Every product lives on a life cycle. Know what it is. Do your product placement. Match all those things up. Use the price to value we talked about. Promote with the proof and urgency. The brief is the bridge from all these things. And again, product marketing is the thing to really invest in. I would say that not only, I'm glad you came to this training today. If we could bring this training to your C-suite, if we could bring it to operations, I think everybody benefits. I know I've had great success in being able to get everybody on the same page because, again, accounting people, they don't have product marketing classes, but if they understand this, they go, oh, I get it. We need to account in different ways, right? Or if I'm forecasting, these are different forecasts to understand this. So I think it's important that we start doing more cross-training and we can understand these pieces. I've done this presentation, by the way, for boards as well. I think it's wonderful. They walk away and they go, okay, that's interesting. We need to think about that because again, your board could come from, maybe they're like a physician, right? And the physicians never had product marketing. So they can understand this and they're like, okay, I get it. It's not just like an easy thing to do. You don't just send an email and here comes the money. So course, I'm going to be a little bit loyal, very loyal to all of our fellow marketers out there. So with that, I would like to say thank you very much for joining. Happy to be in touch. My information, I'll send it to everybody, and I look forward to our next set of slides, right? So make sure we do that. Since today's Friday, I thought I'd put in a where to start on Monday, right? So let's get going on those product placemats. And again, thank you so much. And I look forward to serving you again. Take care.